Welcome to Motivation. I'm Ron Henderson, aka the Fitness King. On today's Motivation, I'm excited to say that we have a great guest on. We have Mr. Scott Winter. Welcome to Motivation, Scott. How are you?
Hey, Ron, thanks so much for having me. I am doing really well, thanks, man.
Well, you
Yeah,
look good. You look good. I went through your bio, your resume, and you have a lot to share. But before we get into really your movie, Beautifully Broken, which is just newly released, and you're one of the stars in that movie, right?
yeah, yep,
Okay. Where did you grow up? Give me a little background about you because you're doing some really fantastic things as far as Christian movies and your whole resume of movies that you've been in, like 24, Law and Order, all the things that you've done. But it
yeah,
didn't just start there, Scott. Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like? And share some of that with us.
yeah. So I was born at New York City Hospital, and I lived in New York City when I was a kid. Um, we moved just outside of the city. Uh, Families from New Rochelle and Larchmont and Mamaroneck. It's kind of a suburb. Went to a little bit of an inner city type school. In seventh grade, after the completion of seventh grade, we moved out to Arizona,
Okay.
which was kind of a radical paradigm shift. We had been visiting Arizona as kids. My grandparents had a little house out there, and then we moved. In Arizona, I went to a Catholic prep school. Um, uh, we enjoyed Arizona. There was really no theater or acting on the horizon. I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, and uh, I had a desire to get into acting, but I actually had quite a bit of fear and rejection growing up. It wasn't really so much of coming from family. It
Why?
was
Why do you think
more,
that was? Why do you think that was, Scott?
I think it was probably kind of a DNA phenomenon.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think there was a lot of just a lot of tension in my house when I was much younger,
Yep.
um, and so that just kind of set me on a little bit of a track. I think, I, just had a lot of your show, Ron. It's called Motivation,
Yeah.
uh, but I didn't have a lot of motivation because
Okay.
we know how fear can kind of, take clip us from behind, and so there was actually a lot of kind of distorted identity stuff, in my 20s, and then I was in a chaplaincy program at a cancer ward in New York City. I wanted to do something for God because I wanted to connect the dots.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand faith, that it was this free gift. I didn't get it. So I had come from an earned, kind of an earned idea, understanding that almost like a performance driven um, exchange with God and with heaven. So I was in this program, and I think I got very convicted when I was in this program in New York City. And I came home one night, and I had a powerful experience in my apartment in New York City. I had started acting, by the way. Um, I just dove into this. Is that all
Great.
cool?
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. I just, I had been acting, Ron, and just kind of living foolishly, as kind of a way to reconcile just a lot of the storminess that I carried, kind of the pain I carried just from being an unreconciled, 20 something.
No, yeah. I
So,
think a lot of us have gone through that, including myself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's sadly it's I don't want to call it a rite of passage, but it seems to be the way of the world. It seems to be the way that a lot of us go. Um, so I think in the midst of that, I really cried out for deeper meaning. I remember taking a philosophy class in Northwestern on existentialism. This was before the chaplaincy program, but I was really in a spiritual crisis. It was like nothing seemed real to me. Didn't understand the point of life, the purpose
Sure.
for living, just all those really hard questions, when you're in the storm of identity, and it's a big identity crisis. So anyway,
But
so
you're still acting at the time. You're still acting.
yeah, I had started acting, and so that was kind of a secular salvation in a sense. That brought some freedom because I hadn't grown up with the gift of creativity. Really, I didn't pursue it. And then when I got into acting, I think just crossing over that chicken line of fear in doing the acting, so I started taking a class at kind of a reputable place in New York City, and I just felt a freedom, not the freedom, but I felt a freedom, and so that was significant for me. But after a few years, even that freedom, that creative freedom, started to dwindle a bit. So I needed the real deal. So
if you could just briefly, the night when you said that transformation took place, just briefly, what was that like, Scott? Because I know the movie Beautifully Broken it's faith-based, the way you guys did that movie, and how your life has just kind of transitioned along. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, that. So in Romans 8:15, Paul says we've not been given the spirit of bondage to be made a slave to fear again, but we've been given the spirit of adoption, where we cry, Abba, Father.
Right.
And so that night, I had procrastinated for years, really coming to God to have an authentic exchange, an authentic encounter with Him, because I was afraid, because I had that fear of rejection, just like Romans 8:15 talks about. Because some translations don't say the spirit of bondage; they say the spirit of rejection.
Exactly.
So anyway, so I was fearful. But what if God does not answer me? But that night, He did, and I had a low-level depression for a good part of my life. And when I was in my apartment in New York City and I cried out to Him that night, He lifted that out of my heart, and it blew my mind. It blew my mind. I was like, that was the first time in my life that I felt joy. I had experienced maybe a little bit of happiness here or there.
Peace.
Yeah, fleeting, but this moment, it was profound. It was a person. Joy is a person. Yep. And so this was a profound moment for me. Yep. And then there was a luminescent phenomenon that happened in my room with a light, and that, I look back and sometimes I'm like, was that my imagination? But, God looks at the heart, and the most magnified component of that night was the heart experience, and that depression was just obliterated.
Amen.
And,
if I was there, I'd give you a hug right now, brother. I would.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. Yeah.
Give you a hug.
That was a big deal for me. Yeah, that was a big deal that night. Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. How did all that experience transfer into like your movies that you've done? When I went through your history, some of the movies, like 24 was one of my favorite TV shows, by the way. 24.
Yeah.
Serious, but Beautifully Broken. I had the privilege of actually talking with Benjamin too. He was in the movie with you, and I cried a couple of times in the movie theater over that movie because I had experience of doing a crusade in Ethiopia. So I was there for like 7 days ministering out there to a lot of people, and I saw the people there, and I thought, wow, horrible, and based on a true story. So how did making the movie, what did that do for you, being in Beautifully Broken, and how do you incorporate that even into your life and your ministry of what you do?
Yeah. I was drawn to Beautifully Broken for the story.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the pay, it wasn't the experience of the team.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of reasons why the movie should not have come together,
Right.
but I was drawn to the movie for the story, and to see how God, um, you know, took these three families and in His infinite brilliance, um, gave them, ushered them into, wholeness and freedom
Right.
in a way that no movie writer, no screenwriter could ever imagine.
Right.
Um, Having the Mwizerwa family from Rwanda on the set was a big deal.
Wow.
That was a big deal for me. I was pretty
The real family was on the set.
the real family,
Wow. Wow.
and in the real story, when they escaped the genocide in Rwanda, they didn't have one kid as they did in the movie. They did that for the purposes of storytelling.
Right.
They had 4 children,
Wow.
and the mother was pregnant.
Wow.
So that was the real story. When the Rwanda thing happened, I was living in New York City, and I did a one-man show at my theater company, and I had to do something about Jesus
Right.
because he had touched me so deeply, and I was such a wreck before then that I had to tell people.
Right. Uh-huh.
So I did this show,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it in front of a secular audience, and I really saw the power of ministry through the arts
Mm-hmm.
in this one-man show that I did.
What was
But
the show? What was it?
it was a show. I called it. I entitled it Dog,
Okay.
because I felt like a dog, but then dog spelled backwards is God,
Right. Yep.
and so dog was almost like my previous life.
Yeah.
So I was just being creative. And then in Ecclesiastes, there's a quote. It's a book. I'm a real student of the scriptures, but that's not a book that I look at a lot. But there's a quote in Ecclesiastes that says, "It's better to be a living dog than a dead lion."
Right.
And I'm not an astrological guy at all, but I'm a Leo. I was born in August. And I felt like my old life was very much of a dead lion kind of life. And so I just called it Dog, and it was about a guy who is very embedded in the culture of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I just essentially told a story about a guy who was an ad executive,
Mm-hmm.
who was suffering from an identity crisis. This is very close to my heart. He was in therapy. He was successful.
Mm-hmm.
Life was not enough for him. He became an actor,
Right.
and then he actually becomes famous. And then his life really spirals because he finds out that fame is definitely not the answer.
Right.
So now he's exhausted everything that the world exalts, that the world holds as dear. He's had money and he's had fame,
Yep.
and then at the end of this at the end of this production, he collides with the presence of the true and living God, and he has this radical experience, and I end on that. And so it was powerful. It was really powerful. But in that show, Ron, I end up incorporating the Rwanda crisis,
Right.
just in like a tidbit, but it affected me a lot. That was the worst thing that happened in my lifetime. So when I read the script of Beautifully Broken, I was like, oh wow, it was I never went to Rwanda. I've always had a deep affection for Africa, for a lot of the nations in Africa. So so I was drawn to it because of that. And just to cap that, that one-man show, and just that whole way I kind of came into acting, and then meeting the Lord, that shaped a lot of my values and my desire to see Hollywood transformed.
Amen. Amen. Have you done any more faith-based movies besides Beautifully Broken?
That was it.
Okay.
That was it.
Is it
my
doing
friend,
pretty well? Is it doing pretty well?
Sadly, the numbers were not what they expected. The people who have seen it have been deeply impacted.
Amen. I'm going again. So.
Well, yeah, there you go, bro. Where I saw it, Ron, in the AMC theater that I went to in Los Angeles, two people jumped up on benches in the lobby after and gave testimony. Who had real trauma in their life, and one of them was going to take her life the week before, and she jumped up and she talked about how the movie gave her hope and healing.
Amen.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of those testimonies. It's going to go to Netflix on December 4th, so it's going to have a lot more life. I just, I wish they had gotten the release right. The people who have seen it loved it, but, I wish we had gotten more people in. That's a marketing thing,
Amen, because at the theater I went, AMC theater, actually, when I left the theater, I called Benjamin. I said, I got to tell you, man, this is really great. I couldn't find a poster. I wanted to take a picture of myself by the poster of your Broken, because it really did touch me. And I told my wife, I said, you got to see it. And then I was, there you go. Yep. And I said, you got to see it. And so then I'm talking with the lady in one of my, I do work as I'm a motivational speaker. And she's like, one of the guys, I don't know who the person is, but somebody is related, a friend of hers is related to somebody that's with you guys in the movie. And so she was excited. She says, yeah, we're renting out the whole theater and blah, blah, blah. And I'd love to see more people do that. And so that's why it was important for me to get you on to and just, share your vision and your thoughts on the movie and all of that. So, what was it like working with the other actors as well as Benjamin for you? What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was great. Everybody was very professional.
Humble, right?
What's that?
Humble people, right?
Humble people. Yeah. Sometimes there's a real heavy sense of entitlement in the industry of Hollywood, but that was not the case. Everybody was very grateful to have a job, and everybody did a really good job, with their acting. So we formed some good friendships. I think the screening was great because we all kind of got to commune again. I haven't seen Benji since we made the film, but seeing him again, we have a real love for each other, and so it's really fun to see everybody, at the screening and after the product is finished, and everybody's just very different. Everybody brings very, very different things to the table. The South African actors were incredible. I thought
the guy that had the machete at the end.
Yeah.
What was that guy's name? Do you remember offhand? If you don't, that's fine.
I don't, but
the reason I'm bringing him up is I got to tell you this, Scott. I did not like that guy. That means he's a really good actor.
Yeah.
Because he sold that part.
A credit to him is he's a really good guy.
Yeah, he looks like he's perfect fit for that part. I was like, wow.
Perfect. It was such good casting. All the African actors were, I thought, so well cast.
I agree.
And he was fantastic, and we had a long chat about the movie that he's. Hold on one second, Ron.
That's fine.
Hey, Gracie.
Yeah. Hey, and the folks at home, they know this too. So I appreciate you doing this out of your home. I mean, you're a busy man, and they're gonna love it. And we don't care about the distraction. We understand you're at home and just taking your time out. This is great. So was that your real daughter? Was that your real daughter acting in the movie?
No.
She did a good job too. All of them.
Yeah, Emily was great. She was in Toy Story 3. She's a hard worker, and she's great. We had a really awesome chemistry. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you tell me about some of the other? You've been on, like I said, Law and Order and 20. What was it like working with Kiefer Sutherland?
Oh, funny enough, I didn't work with Kiefer.
Okay.
I didn't work with him, but I worked with Regina King.
Right. Okay.
And on 24, and Harry Lennox, and that was super exciting. I mean, that was when 24 was like a real hit.
Oh yeah, I watched every one of them.
Yeah.
Straight
So
home 24, nothing else.
Yeah. So that was really fun. I had a great time. I've done some other stuff. Since then I worked on a show called Borgia.
Okay.
That's a Hey Gracie, honey, I'm doing an interview. Can you close the door?
Folks at home, you're watching Motivation with my guest Scott Winters, and that's the kids in the background and the family talking. That's what's good about this show here. So that's good.
Yeah. She's got her cross country team over,
Okay.
which is hilarious right now. I did 2 projects with Tom Fontana. He's a 2-time Emmy winner. He's partners with Barry Levinson. I did the HBO series Oz. It was about prison, and then I did Borgia, which is on Netflix, and they are very hard hitting shows. They are rated, strong R ratings. My stuff is clean. But I don't not do shows, Ron, or movies because they're hard hitting or graphic, because I just believe in storytelling, and I if the Lord gives me the green light to do a project, I'm going to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I saw you were in one of the movies, and you had a ponytail. Was that with the Russians or something? I saw the movie, and I was like, I saw that movie. You were good.
Thanks.
You walked in some bar and you hit a guy. Fight scene. It's on your website where you have the little flick showing the movies.
Okay. I did Good Will Hunting with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
Great movie.
Yeah. I did that. I had a ponytail in that.
You had a jacket on, ponytail.
That was a flashback. So that was from the series Oz, and I have a flashback. There's a flashback in the show because on Oz, I played a prison inmate,
right?
who has severe brain damage, and so it happened in a gang fight. So they have a flashback of me getting into a brawl at a funeral home.
Right. Yep.
When some Goomba hits me over the head with a podium. So I think that's the scene that you might be referring to. Yeah.
So it seems like you're pretty busy, Scott. What do you do for fun? What do you do for fun and those kind of things?
Yeah.
When you're not working, what do you do?
I love to surf. I love the outdoors, camping. We're a close family, so I would say for me, it's pretty much outdoor stuff. That said, it's not daily, but we're pretty similar to most. We love entertainment. Went to a carnival the other night in Malibu. But yeah, I would say outdoor stuff. And when I lived on the East Coast, I did a lot of. I really love to fish. Actually, love fishing. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have a good church you go to?
I do. Yeah, we go to Coast Christian Fellowship It's in Torrance, California. We're in the South Bay of Los Angeles.
Nice.
It's a great church. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Let me ask you, being that the show is motivation, you said in the beginning you were dealing with some different things, different issues growing up. What would you say to an audience out there? I mean, there's people of all ages that commit suicide, and people really don't know where to turn. If you could just take a minute and just share anything that just to kind of like motivate those people to say, hey, look up.
Yeah.
You know, if the Lord's putting something on your heart that you want to share, motivation, you can say anything you want, be 100% transparent, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, Ron, you know, I would say that, you know, our culture, is, you know, there's a real identity crisis in our culture, in that, you know, Western culture, it's not just Western, it's Eastern too, but it has its own agenda, so to speak, for evangelizing people.
Right.
And, you know, one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is in Galatians, where Paul says, it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. You know, I want nothing to do with religion. I just gotta out that. You know, that's a system of belief. But you know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you know, God is real. You know, Paul even says in one of his letters that, you know, it appears to be foolishness that we would believe in the cross, but to those who know the Lord, it's the power of salvation. So I would just say, what did Jesus say we need? He said the one thing that we need to walk in the kingdom of heaven, to appropriate freedom, is the faith of a child. And a lot of us have a nostalgia for our youth. Why? Well, because it's when you're free, right? Self-consciousness has not taken over, fear, you know, a lot of these things, a lot of these giants that like to take us down. So this is I didn't mean to be so long-winded, but
30 seconds.
Yeah, I would say, Ron, look to Jesus. Look to Jesus. Approach him with courage and expectancy, and look to the scriptures, because they are as credible a history book as any AP history class. Atheists have even said that. So I would say that there's hope and there's healing, and it's in a person whose name is Jesus, and he's seated right now on a throne in a location, and he loves you, and he's trustworthy, and he's the best friend you could ever have.
Amen. 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 I appreciate that, Scott. You've been watching Motivation with my guest, the one and only Scott Winters. He's one of the stars in a new movie called Beautifully Broken, which I've seen and I'm going to see again. All right? Folks at home, you've been watching Motivation, and all that you do, stay fit, stay blessed, and stay motivated. And we're going to see you next time on Motivation. Thank you.